Once upon a time, there was a young woman named Mary with gentle features. Her eyes sparkled, her smile was soft, like a flower just opening to the morning light. But behind that delicate face hid a cold heart, and a mind full of twisted plans that knew no mercy, no virtue. Ever since she was a little girl, she'd seen the world as this huge beast that devours the weak. Deep inside, she believed there was no place for anyone but the strong. Wealth, power, those were the fortress she needed to build to protect her future. But she wasn't about to turn to ordinary theft or obvious scams. Oh no. Her mind burned with cunning and this sort of dark scientific curiosity. As a teenager, she drowned herself in books about chemistry, the brain, even scent, and slowly, a dark project took shape. She wanted to create this mysterious fragrant solution, not just something nice for the nose, but something that would slip right into the brain, break into the centers of will, so that whoever smelled it would obey her. Never realizing their own will had vanished, her long nights turned into this eerie theater for such thoughts. She'd sit there in her dim little lab, surrounded by glass vials, papers scribbled with weird symbols. Sometimes she'd just burst into quiet laughter, imagining how she'd pull people's strings like puppets. Money wasn't really her main goal. What she craved was the sheer thrill of total control over minds. Then came that one strange day that changed everything. One night, while she was busy working on a new compound, the sleeve of her coat brushed against this tiny vial she'd set aside weeks before. It fell to the ground and shattered. The glass made this eerie sound that echoed in her ears, like a bell tolling for disaster. From the shards rose a thin pink mist. It slipped into her breath before she could even turn away. It felt like her whole world was shaking. The floor swayed under her, the walls spun, sounds faded, and her memories fell away like leaves ripped off a tree by a cruel wind. She clutched her head with both hands, trying to grab hold of the fragments of her mind before they scattered, but it was useless. Then, a terrible silence settled inside her. She opened her eyes slowly. She no longer knew who she was or where she'd been, or why her hands were surrounded by papers, tools, broken glass. She left her house, staggering like someone sick with a strange fever, wandering the streets with no goal at all. All she had left was an empty body and a blank memory, and so began long, hard years of drifting. From city to city, sidewalk to sidewalk, she felt the bite of freezing cold when winter wrapped around her, with not even a coat to keep it out. She felt the scorching heat of the noonday sun as the asphalt nearly melted under her bare feet. Many nights she slept hungry, leaning against a cold wall, woken by shouting vendors or blaring horns. Faces passed by. Some pitied her, offering scraps. Others just ignored her like she was nothing more than a pile of trash. As the years crawled on, the glow of youth faded from her features. She grew haggard, her hair tangled and rough, eyes sunken, wearing clothes that couldn't keep out even the gentlest breeze. Anyone looking at her would never have guessed she'd once been a striking young woman with a sharp mind, plotting to bend humanity. Eventually, her tired feet led her to a quiet, peaceful village, surrounded by green orchards and warm little mud houses pressed close together. That's where Jack lived, this 13-year-old boy. Known to everyone for having the brightest heart in town, he never hesitated to help anyone, carrying wood for the old folks, comforting children, laughing with them until their tears dried up. One sunny day, Jack saw this woman, Mary, sitting under a big tree at the edge of the village. She looked exhausted in this way that just broke his heart. He walked up and offered her some water, but she just stared at him with these glassy eyes, said nothing. He left the water by her side, came back the next day with some simple food, then brought an old blanket he'd found in their storeroom. Pretty soon, visiting her every morning became this little ritual, something he couldn't even start his day without. Little by little, she too, without realizing it, began to wait for him. With those vacant eyes of hers, she actually felt calmer whenever she saw him coming. He'd tell her about his day, chasing animals, or how their neighbor built a new shed, and she'd listen in this strange, deep silence. As days went by, Jack's heart felt more and more responsible for her, until he started to wonder. Who is she really? Then one morning, he finally gathered up his courage. He said gently as he handed her an apple, "You know, my name's Jack. What's yours?" Where did you come from?" She slowly lifted her head and looked at him for a long time, like she was trying to unlock some hidden box inside her mind. But she didn't speak. He kept asking on other days until one time. Her lips moved and she muttered these broken words, "Lab, tests, control." Jack froze. A chill crawled up from his back to his neck. He didn't understand, but something about it was just deeply strange. Those words kept circling in his mind, haunting him at night as he lay there staring up at his little wooden ceiling. He'd whisper to himself, "Even if these are weird words, she's kind now. Lost and innocent. I'll help her." To the very end. Because his heart just couldn't leave her like that, he started taking her to doctors. First the village's old doctor, then 2 visiting physicians. Each one would shine lights in her eyes, test her reactions, ask her name, but she'd only answer with odd mutterings. They all told him her condition was deeply rooted, best handled in a specialized hospital for memory and mental health. They advised him gently to ease his own heart and let them take over. But he refused. And then, one day while he was visiting his grandfather's house, wandering among all those old books, he found this small volume titled "Don't Help Her." And between its pages, he saw words he knew all too well. Tests, lab, explosion. Maybe it was just coincidence. He didn't know this book was about Mary, discovered by the authorities after they entered her lab when she vanished, written about in the newspapers. Jack couldn't let it go. He went back to the old woman and tried asking her again, but it was no use. Still, those words haunted him. Lab, tests, control, explosion, power, wealth. People are fools. Each time he thought of them, it felt like something was squeezing his chest. Until one night, he decided to pour everything out to his grandfather. This wise old man who'd once been a brilliant lawyer, who knew all the hidden corners of people's souls. He sat with him and told the whole story. His grandfather stayed silent for a long while, face calm but eyes blazing with concern. Then he let out this deep sigh and said, "My boy, this isn't just any woman. What you've told me, it might not be fantasy. We have to be very careful." With a trembling hand, he reached for this old wooden box, pulled out a weathered notebook full of addresses of his old friends, wrote a letter in slow, weary handwriting, sealed it and said, "Let me handle this." A few days later, police cars and dark official vehicles rolled into the village. Officers moved quietly, searching until they found her sitting under that same old tree. They surrounded her with this odd kind of gentleness, like they were handling a ticking bomb. They carefully studied her face, compared it to old photos and documents saved for years, whispering among themselves. Finally, after a series of checks and quiet investigations, they confirmed she really was the scientist who had once run off after her secret experiments were uncovered. They took her away in this quiet vehicle, driving her to a special facility, part psychiatric care, part secure lockdown, where doctors would treat her and make sure her dangerous mind could never again rise to control people. When Jack found out what had happened, he felt this bittersweet swirl inside him. He was glad he'd, unknowingly, helped remove a huge danger from innocent people. But it hurt too. He remembered her sitting so quietly under the tree, taking bread from him with shaking hands, not even knowing who she was. As days passed, he often lay awake at night, staring up at the ceiling, whispering, even if she was once that person, now she's someone else. Did the evil die with her memory? Or is it just asleep waiting for someone to wake it up? Jack learned this huge lesson, that kindness alone isn't always enough. Sometimes the most painful choice is actually the greatest act of mercy. Yet he still carried in his young heart a compassion far beyond his years, and made himself a promise never to reach out a hand to help someone without opening his eyes fully to see who they truly are. And so when that deep story closed its chapter, leaving in the heart of a young boy a wisdom he'd carry for the rest of his life.